Welcome back to Every Doctor Who Ever. Today on our big long journey, we're talking about Season 8 of classic Doctor Who. We're on the second season of the Third Doctor's era, and things are starting to get a little bit wackier and a little bit more traditional in terms of what we knew about Doctor Who the past, 6 seasons before we got to the more grounded Season 7. We're still in the part of the series that I'll completely admit I'm not the biggest fan of. That's kind of like a little bit of a spoiler for the rest of the video, but Season 8 and Season 7 are not my favorite era. I do love the Third Doctor, of course, but when it gets back to what I knew from those first 6 seasons and what we'll kind of know from the rest of Doctor Who in general. I'll get to my final opinions later on. We should begin with the actual stories itself. The current producer is still Barry Letts, and the script editor is still Terrence Dicks. They'll be part of the series for a little bit, so they'll kind of be with us for the next several seasons. So if, whatever reason you like or dislike these 2 seasons, it'll kind of continue going forward. But it will be cool to see them evolve over time in terms of how exactly they decide to run the series. First up is Terror of the Autons. Terror of the Autons is interesting for the fact that it doesn't list its director in the opening credits, mostly because its director was then producer Barry Letts. BBC had regulations in the 70s which prohibited producers from also being the director, at least from getting the credit for doing so, and that's why you really don't know who exactly the director is for many, many years. However, we do know that it was written by Robert Holmes, who of course had previously helped create the Autons in the first place. Initially, he didn't want to come back to rewrite these characters as he wanted to do something fresh, but less would he know, the best episodes are the ones that bring back villains that we already knew. Also some of the worst, but they're definitely the ones people want to see. Season 8, especially starting with this story, will really begin certain things which will be part of the series for the next several seasons throughout Letts and Dick's time, which most importantly will be Jo Grant. Jo Grant is introduced in this, and she'll be the Doctor's main companion throughout the next 3 whole seasons. We also have Mike Yates, who's kind of the equivalent of the male companion of the trio, even though in reality the actual best companion of the season, better than either of them, is John Levine returning as John Benton. Him alongside the also returning Brigadier forms the unit team of the next couple of seasons, and hell, we also get better uniforms for them that are much better than the khaki uniforms, which were called the Chocolates by Barry Letts, as he really didn't like the beige uniforms from the previous season. It's also the appearance of the unit lab, which will be the main setting the Doctor will be in when he's not in the TARDIS. This will really form the identity of what Doctor Who will be throughout the rest of the unit era, with Season 7 kind of being the slow beginnings of everything coming together, and things are now kind of in place during this season moving forward. And yes, most importantly, we have the real best companion, Bessie. Getting into the plot itself, we begin with a circus manager who finds a Time Lord TARDIS who isn't the Doctor's. The man steps out and seemingly hypnotizes him. He uses the man to help him get a meteor, which he hooks up to a radio tower, shrinking the guy who was in charge of that radio tower. No, that is not fully explained why the Master can and likes to do that, but it won't be the last time we see that. The Doctor meets Jo for the first time, and she doesn't give a great first impression when she, puts out this weird whatever Doctor was doing with his machine or something. Them and Unit start looking into what exactly was going on with the radio tower and finding the weird shrunken man, but the Doctor is soon contacted by a Time Lord. I don't know how that Time Lord gets here, by the way. He's just floating. Is his TARDIS his friggin' umbrella? What? He tells him the name of the Time Lord, whom the Doctor seemingly knows. This Time Lord named the Master. The Master is working with a separate plastic company than the one from the last time we saw the Autons in order to help the Nestine consciousness sort of bring itself back. He is the CEO's son under his control through kind of hypnosis, but he's not able to hypnotize the other leaders, one of whom he tells all about the sturdiness of his great plastic chair. Looks very comfortable, if it weren't for the fact that it was the chair that eats you. No, not the chair that eats you. The CEO then shows up and basically tells the Master to get the hell out, and because the Master can't hypnotize him, he gives him this silly little creature, which apparently is meant to be similar to a troll doll, at least the way they used to look back during this time period. The Doctor starts looking into how exactly the Master is working with the Nestene consciousness, and through this we get introduced to Mike Yates, who apparently was around the previous season and cleaned up what happened in the previous Auton adventure. He just casually goes, yeah, Mike Yates helped clean up what happened last time. It's like, when? Where? Was he one of these guys? Where was he? Jo begins to spy and track down the Master, and she is then found and hypnotized to open up a box the Master sends to them, which nearly explodes and kills all of them. The Doctor does the thing he did previously in the show, which is unhypnotize her. Thank God he was able to do that since the first Doctor time period. Are able to track down the Master's movements to the circus, and though they're nearly killed by a bunch of carnies, they do take the dematerialization circuit from the Master's TARDIS. Yes, that is a mouthful, but that is what they take. I will sure call it a time thingy going forward. The Doctor is told about the death of the CEO and looks into the weird-ass troll doll, and more importantly, how it and other pieces of plastic seem to move. Thinking it'll move with heat, he soon finds out that it's actually through radio connection. The Master's plan is to plant a bunch of, plastic flowers around by giving them to people and then activate them via the radio tower. Unit is able to track him down and fight against the Master's Autons, but the Master is able to get away with the van that was driving all of them. All the weird big-headed Autons that were handing out all the flowers. How goofy these things look. Terror of the Autons is an incredibly quick storyline, and I really enjoyed it. I must say that it's probably the most enjoyable story of the season due to the fact that I think it paces itself very well. I think it's probably equally as good as the original. Oddly, I might like the original a little bit more, which is odd, because I swear I remembered liking this one more, but after coming back to this one, I realized that I enjoyed the original one's attempt at a mystery more than this one did. But that being said, Roger Delgado as the, original Master is absolutely phenomenal. Being best friends with John Pertwee, the two of them bounce off of each other so incredibly well, and the whole entire time, whether he is or without John Pertwee, Roger Delgado will really be the best part of this season, and he's certainly the best part about Terror of the Autons. With the chair that eats you and the weird troll doll and the weird Autons, this is a wacky storyline that I find a lot of enjoyment with how absolutely bonkers it is. It just feels so weird in the 70s way instead of this attempt at grounded mystery. It just is weird pulpy sci-fi that I really enjoy of this era. This is more what I was looking for throughout the entirety of the previous season, and I have a lot of fun with this story and will gladly come back to this one. It's one that I absolutely recommend to those. It's, again, probably as good as the first appearance of the Autons, and it's kind of the last time we'll see them for a good while. At least for Doctor Who fans, it'll take extra canon stuff to really see the Autons in live action, but there's a reason why they're remembered as well as they are, because these are very interesting, very well-made episodes that I think a lot of people really stuck on to in terms of them being memorable monsters and villains. It just sucks we didn't get weird tentacle monster this time, because I don't know where the Nestene consciousness is or how the Master's really working with it, but the Master will constantly throughout the season decide, yeah, that'll work. I'll definitely work with this big giant monster. It won't betray me at all. I'll be fine. I will note just off the bat, the Chumbly of this season is in fact that weird ass troll doll. God, it's so silly. It's so silly. It's just the best. Look at it set up. Oh God, it's so stupid. They genuinely thought that this was something creepy, and it's no. Next up is the Mind of Evil, and I'm gonna tell you right now, this 6-episode storyline is a big waste of time. Sometimes when I go through these, I have to look up a general reception of these storylines to wonder, am I the one who's wrong? And thankfully I'm not. I did not care for the Mind of Evil, and I don't think anyone else really does necessarily. Sure, there's probably fans of them, there's fans of every episode that I say is bad, but not as much certain ones like the Mind of Evil. It is notable that the Mind of Evil went over budget, which isn't anything new for Doctor Who, because they're always doing that. But this time they actually really did it thanks to the fact that they use a real helicopter in the ending episode, which cost them a lot. The director of this, Timothy Combe, who had previously helped did the Silurians and Evil of the Daleks, two other storylines that also went nearly, if not completely over budget, was kind of taken out of the rotation of guys I want to bring back to help direct episodes by Barry Letts, and Comby never works for Doctor Who ever again. It was, however, written by Don Houghton of Inferno. In this story, it has various working titles like The Pandora Machine, Man Hours, Pandora's Box, and Don Houghton really didn't like that they picked The Mind of Evil, which, yeah, it sounds too cheesy. But he at least enjoyed his time writing, as after doing very well with Inferno, he was brought back on to hopefully make something else just as good. Notably, he does not. This is one of several episodes during the Third Doctor's period that basically nearly, if not all, and especially in this case, all of its colored video footage was completely deleted. Again, we are not completely out of the era where a lot of the footage was just gone during this time, but thankfully it was a lot easier to recover the Third Doctor's era stuff like this episode, mostly by just recoloring the black and white 16mm versions of the recordings that were sent to overseas areas. So, in this, the Doctor looks into a machine that apparently counters the minds of criminals to stop them from being the evil, I guess. After it apparently kills a guy, which the people working on the machine are very confused about, the Doctor starts looking into it and finds out that it is, yes, completely bullshit. Especially after another guy seemingly dies of fright, though the Doctor who was working on him says heart attack, he seemingly has evidence of other stuff killing him. Meanwhile, UNIT is looking into why the World Peace Conference isn't going so well, as a delegate from China starts causing some trouble. This is sort of splitting them into two, because at the same time Mike Yates is trying to move a nuke from place to place. Benton follows the delegate as she sneaks around and kind of mostly tries to go into this weird little tent, but he loses her after he seemingly comes under effect of the same weird warbly waves as the machine was making out. The Doctor is convinced to go and help them, with Joe kind of keeping watch on the weird warbly machine. He connects the fact that a delegate from a particular place is connected to the mentioning of a Chinese woman was working with the person who made the machine, as we find out that she was said assistant to the person who made the machine, which of course is the Master! So it turns out it's actually a fear machine with a weird little creature inside it, which feeds off fear and makes you all scared until you die. Normally it just makes you see things, but for some reason they were able to make it, like this one time, make her look like something, and she looks like a big Chinese dragon. It is such a stupid looking effect that the actual production itself thought that it looked so stupid, and they gave it the nickname, of course, Puff the Magic Dragon. God, it looks so dumb. Look at this friggin' thing. I mean, I know it's Doctor Who and I shouldn't care too much about the realistic nature of these effects, but come on, look at that thing. That's one of the worst effects in Doctor Who. What is cool, though, is the fact that the Chinese characters in this storyline are played by actual Chinese people, or at least Asian actors, and that's really cool, because normally it's, yellowface. And that won't be the last time that happens in Doctor Who. Master tries to help the Doctor to convince him control it after he basically takes over the jail that it's held in. And that happens twice, by the way. The prisoners take over the jail, but they're fought back and they're put back in the cells. But the Master then goes to convince the prisoners to help him gas the whole place, which is why we do that twice. But he captures the Doctor through that and tries to convince him. The Doctor straight up just tips the whole table at him. And that's a funny scene due to the fact that the Master nearly slips on his ass after trying to chase the Doctor, which was completely not part of the scene. That was just Roger Delgado nearly falling on his ass. They're stuck in the jail for the rest of the story, so they basically have to wait for UNIT to finish up what they were doing so they could help them out, and eventually track down the Master from stopping him from doing his real plan, which is the mentioned nuke from earlier. Remember that? Yeah, he wants to actually control this, so he's been using the fear machine to take over the jail so we could hire people, so we could get the nuke, so we could hold the peace conference in. What is the plan of the Master, right? Why wouldn't you just use the fear machine against all of the delegates to throw the world into chaos, right? You could just use that. That would be even easier. You already have your freaking crazy weapon. Is it due to the fact that you can't control it? That's why you needed the Doctor to help you? Did you really think that the Doctor was going to work with you that easily? Why? Again, the Master just takes a weird creature, goes, yes, this won't betray me. I'll have full control of it. Why'd you think that was gonna work? Of course, they take the nuke by basically tricking the Master into letting them go by giving him back his weird time thingy and leave him to basically blow up the nuke and the fear machine from a distance. The Master leaves and he thinks that he's perfectly fine, but of course the Doctor reveals he has the real-time thingy, thus stopping the Master from leaving to wherever he wants to. Presumably the Master can still, like, make his machine look like whatever he wants, so, but he just can't use the TARDIS to leave, so... Mind of Evil sucks. The Mind of Evil is lame. It's not even good. It doesn't continue anything. It doesn't have, like, anything for Jo to do. Jo was alright in the previous story, by the way. She didn't do too much, but she just does nothing here. She does try and help out, and good on her for trying to do her job, because this is her job, by the way. She also gets paid for this. But, like, Jo isn't as helpful as she'll be in other storylines, and the Doctor ends up kind of not doing all that much either. And again, with the whole, like, taking over the jail twice thing, really feels like we're just trudging the same ground for, like, half of the storyline, because it's really like this was a story that was worth 4, maybe even 3 episodes, bumped to 6, and it just doesn't feel like it has all of what it needs. Now, here I am once again telling you that classic Doctor Who takes too damn long to get to its point, and every storyline needs less episodes, which the series will not fully figure out till, like, the end of the third Doctor's era, really, but, nothing new. But that is the reason why certain stories aren't as good as I think they could have been for this time period, and this one especially is that. Probably could have been a lot better if you had, firstly, a whole other draft, because what the fuck, and then secondly, less time. It didn't need as much time as it was given to do all nothing that it was doing in the episode. You should have used it better or not had it at all. The Mind of Evil is a waste of your time. It is probably the weakest out of all the third Doctor storylines. Remember when I said I didn't like the friggin' astronauts from the previous one? This one's worse. This one's more boring. It doesn't even have, like, the goofy little third Doctor, like, whoop thing from that previous episode. Remember that? This is boring. Nothing happens in this episode. Nothing happens. I have nothing to joke about. There's not even, like, silly thing that the Master does. At least Rada Delgado is still enjoyable in this episode, and him and John Pertwee scenes are the only really good part of this storyline. That's it, dog. That's it. This is a absolute skip. This is like a recommend skip. Of, like, don't watch this episode. You're not gonna get anything from like, seeing it, and you're not gonna miss anything by skipping it. This is one of those that, hey, you wanna watch all of classic Doctor Who, and you realize there's too many freaking storylines? Skip this one. There's better ones going forward. Next up is The Claw of Axos, written by Bob Baker and Dave Martin, but notably we will see them quite a bit throughout the next several years of Doctor Who. And directed by Michael Ferguson of The War Machines and the Ambassadors of Death, so it's a little bit mixed in this story. Working titles of the story were The Gift, The Friendly Invasion, and The Vampire from Space. That's notable due to the fact that the production of the storyline was kind of started back in the second Doctor era, where things were a little bit different. A possible 7-parter in that era where it was a big-ass jellyfish trying to suck people's brains. Shifted and changed so they wouldn't necessarily have anything involving a vampire involved here. It would, of course, now be about the Axons and Axos. Silly Hobo Pigbin Josh, who apparently the fanbase really likes, spots a big old UFO. After he goes and checks it out, he gets sucked into its weird anus hatch because it's apparently a big flesh UFO. Who, obviously looks into UFOs, gets very excited when a UFO crashes onto Earth. Them and an official from the Ministry of Defense, whose name is Chian, go into this big flesh ship and find the Axons. They promise to give them Axonite, and things are neat, right? Well, the flesh ship is certainly odd, especially in terms of how it looks, a big set of plastic and latex rubber with, green screens in the back to make things just blasted on to look weirder and otherworldly, which I think works out well enough, especially for its time. But obviously, this weird flesh ship isn't all it seems to be. The Axons, which, really just seem perfectly fine, are actually one part of a weird hive mind, which is part of this big ship. The Axonite is soon found out by the Doctor and 2 doctors that he's working with as being part of this hive mind, and they're all controlled under one big eyeball thing. Though told otherwise, Chin kind of takes over the operation and at first stops Unit from telling the UN about it and Axonite, but Unit is able to take back the situation. Unfortunately, they take it back, forcing the UK to share Axonite with the world, right when the Doctor figures out that it's not a good thing to actually share. Him and Jo try to go onto the ship to find out more, but are soon stuck there thanks to the big old meatball monsters and tentacles in this big ship. The eyeball sent previously someone to go and fight against the Doctor, But this other guy basically decided to go his own way and start doing his own thing. This guy, of course, obviously being, who then is forced to work with UNIT after he tries to sneak in and steal the Doctor's TARDIS to help them defeat Axos. Though they don't want him to kill the Doctor, the Master goes, well, we'll have to risk it. And despite that, that still doesn't work. The Doctor and Joe are able to barely make their way out and make the way back to the base that they were using, and the Doctor decides he's going to try and trick everyone into thinking that he's just basically betraying them and leaving with the Master. The two of them seemingly leave on their TARDIS, but in fact the Doctor was leading them back onto the ship, all to make sure that he stops them and Axos's big meatball monsters from killing the rest of his friends and taking over the world, by basically sending Axos into a friggin' time loop, which I'm not sure how that works, but okay. The Master is given his weird time thingy so he could actually make his TARDIS work, so he's able to escape it. But the Doctor is just barely able to make his way outside of the time loop, leaving Axos there for good. What's notable is that this was the first time we saw the Doctor's TARDIS interior since the War Games. We saw a TARDIS interior in previous storylines when we were in the Master's TARDIS, sure, but it's cool to see, what the actual TARDIS interior looks like again. And the new panel, which we'll see throughout the Third Doctor's time period, which of course is green, because it canonically was green for several years. The Claws of Axos is a fun storyline. It's a very short one, it's 4 episodes, it goes by pretty quickly, and I think it doesn't waste your time in any way, right? Now, it's not the best written storyline of all time. It feels a little bit like general alien invasion, and we almost feel a little bit stupid for trying to trust these weird aliens that give us no reason to trust them, as they give us their weird flesh thing that we're like, yeah, sure, okay, this won't help them take over the world. But despite the lack of a vetting process when it comes to aliens crashing down to Earth on their weird worm ships, this is still a fun episode. I really did enjoy this storyline for all that it added to the relationship of the Doctor and Joe. I think they really do get a lot of time together, and you really see that Joe is a very capable person in actually being able to handle herself. And the fact that she's really good at helping back up the Doctor. We'll see better stuff of that later on. Again, Jo doesn't do too much, but she is a cutie patootie, and I'm fine with her doing whatever she wants on screen. Axos, I think, is a very, notable villain for how just creepy it is. Big flesh ship and how odd it looks regardless. A big eyeball, controlling meatball men and these gold guys would be a fun villain to bring back, into modern times. If we want old enemy to be brought back into modern times, I think this would be a very interesting one to see in modern effects and modern day versions of these designs. This episode is also a good episode for UNIT. You really do get a good look on how exactly they work and what they do on a daily basis in terms of how they track down things and deal with them with their boys being sent out. And they really do seem like a capable group here. And it really feels less like how it was in previous ones where we just got random soldiers. No, they felt like a capable group of people, and it really did add to why exactly these monsters are such a problem. And of course, once again, Roger Delgado is fucking fantastic as he constantly goes up against the Third Doctor, and the two of them have some great back and forths in this episode. Him just constantly being in peril as he tries to deal with this strange monster that I'm sure he got captured with as he tried to work with him after immediately leaving Earth. He probably didn't need to be in the storyline. This is probably the one where he is actively the least important in terms of why he's involved there. The Doctor didn't need the Master's help at all to fuel the TARDIS, but it's fine. It was fun to see him. It was fun to see Roger Delgado regardless, and I am very excited to see more of him throughout the season. P.S. The sonic screwdriver is still not really a major thing in this show yet. I swear I remember it being a thing way earlier, and the Doctor does kind of use it, but it's not the main thing yet. This is a pulpy, weird 70s action sci-fi adventure that I think is definitely worth your time. It's a fun little storyline that's very Doctor Who. It's very quintessential Third Doctor era. It's one that isn't necessarily going to wow you or impress you, but it's one that is incredibly fun, and I must recommend for Doctor Who fans, right? This one's fun. It's not going to be anything iconic or memorable necessarily. It's okay, but it is one that I do think is completely entertaining and worth your time enough for you to check out. Colony in space. Speaking of the sonic screwdriver, we finally get the actual first appearance of the third Doctor sonic screwdriver. He doesn't use it too much in this, but it is indeed here. This was the first directorial assignment by Michael Bryant, who had been the production assistant among other roles since the Inez Loin Peter Bryant time, and you'll certainly be part of the series going forward. Written by Malcolm Hulk of the Silurians and War Games, we're in good hands in order to find some weird sci-fi storyline that will basically bring us back to how we know Doctor Who from before. Let's get to the plot. The Time Lords, who are probably the same guys, I have a theory on who these guys are, but it's not important, grant the Doctor a temporary ability to use his TARDIS, which he does so right when he's showing off Jo. Jo gets her, hey, this is really big in here moment, and it's really cool. She's adorable. They leave to a planet under duress because the Doctor didn't plan to go anywhere. He was like, oh, it's working, okay. And Jo immediately wants to leave. The Doctor's like, sure, we can leave, but first let's look out a little bit. So obviously they're immediately captured by the colonists. They think that they're miners, and no, not like small people, but like people who mine. And of course they end up being like, no, we're not involved. Thankfully they believe them after like a minute or so, though there is a crazy guy who doesn't believe them. He's not really as important, so who cares? They find out that the reason why they're very apprehensive is due to the fact that A, there is actually a mining corporation trying to mine the exact same planet, and B, there's been giant monsters trying to eat them, mostly giant iguanas. As the Doctor starts looking into it, he finds out that the miners actually have big, silly-looking robots that they are making look like big monsters. Because some of the mining corporation people are perfectly fine with just killing some of these settlers, they basically have no qualms with what they had done, because they weren't just scaring them, they were killing them. Thus, the two groups now have to realize they have to call a adjudicator to try and figure out what exactly is going on. While the Doctor's dealing with this, he finds the fact that the whole planet already had people living on it, and they look like zucchini. So he looks into the Zucchini Men and finds out that they have a secret, like, whole city underground, and finds that they're led by, like, nuthead guys who, like, don't speak, they, like, just talk by pointing, and they lead them to their leader, who's a weird, silly baby, and you're like, what just happened? This storyline just goes straight into the weird, right? And, like, straight in the middle of it, and it's so incredibly entertaining. Their leader nearly kills them, but he's like, you didn't know, you can leave, but don't come back. So obviously they will eventually come back. All of this was due to the fact that they had to wait a little bit for the adjudicator to get here, whom of course is the Master, whom is of course trying to utilize this whole situation in order to get some kind of secretive weapon from the Zucchini Men and their old civilization. The Master basically gets the miners to just have the colonists fuck off into their ship, which they know isn't gonna work. So Jo tries her best to like stop that whole thing from working, because the ship might explode, and before she can even get to them, the ship explodes in front of her, and she thinks they all die. They thankfully don't, and are able to fight off the mining corporation guys, mostly with help of the one guy who was like, actually, this is bad. At the same time, the Doctor and the Master basically debate with small baby Nuthead guy over if they should use the weird strange weapon. Thankfully, Nuthead is convinced by the Doctor to destroy the whole thing and actually shut off the entrance to their weird underground city. Thanks to the fight of the two factions, the Master is able to get away to his TARDIS and leave once more, but if it isn't clear enough, won't be the last time we see him. As funny as it is to see a big old iguana, which apparently was just from the London Zoo and didn't want to work with anybody, this storyline ends up being very goofy and very wacky, but that is perfectly fine. The idea of returning the usage of the TARDIS to the Doctor was really meant to be a test of wondering how exactly we can do this while keeping it still kind of earthbound and grounded the same way we have been, a bit of a mix of both worlds. They eventually explain that the Doctor can't just go wherever he wants, but indeed he can use the TARDIS sometimes if the story lets him, because the two people in charge of the show realized, actually, it's very limiting if we aren't able to use our time-space machine that can go anywhere, and we only are in one singular place, and things are coming to us. The occasional Earth storyline would be where we're going forward, with them hopefully using more space stuff, and we will certainly see that going in the future. Unit is cool, the Master is cool, but a little bit of difference in terms of the Earth-based storyline is what we need. Mind you, Roy Delgado, still here, still great with John Pertwee, them working together, always the best part of the season, as I said before. But we do get a little bit more scenes with Jo in this one. She actually takes a bigger role throughout this storyline, and it was really cool to see her actively take part in the plot. We added more to her. We really showed some growth with her in terms of what she can do and what she will decide to do and what she really stands on. And it really built her as a character going forward, of someone who cares about justice and cares about other people and can't stand for these kinds of guys that just throw people to the side as if they're nothing. And they say Doctor Who is woke now, and motherfucker, this was anti-business. This storyline is purposefully anti-colonialism, which to the UK was super woke back in the 70s. So you want to tell me Doctor Who wasn't political ever? You're stupid. No, indeed, Colony Space, I think, wants to say something, but it doesn't necessarily say it well. I see what it's trying to do, and I think it does it as best as it could, but it certainly isn't that smart of a storyline. It wants to be smarter than it actually is, but it just kind of isn't. None of the supporting casts are really all that interesting or add all that much. You don't really care too much about the colonists enough to be like, oh no, they blew up. The season finale of season 8 is The Daemons, or it's spelled The Daemons, so I'm gonna keep calling it that. Directed by Christopher Berry, he wasn't entirely sure of returning because he wanted the less genre-specific stuff, but he was so impressed by the script that he decided, sure, Weird Daemons. Written by Guy Leopold, a pen name for Robert Slotman and Barry Letts, the two of which would be really important as the show going forward, mostly Robert Sloman, but Barry Letts would indeed write every story that Robert Sloman would be credited for going forward. Some dig is being done by some weird borough called Devil's Hump, which apparently was made by pagans a long time ago near a weird witchy town called Devil's End. Devil's End is really just Aldbourne, Wiltshire, which they dressed up and they were like, hey, you're a small little town. You want to just let us be in it? And they're like, sure, yeah. They dressed up the nearby pub as the Cloven Hoof, and they even let the guy who ran the pub just keep the sign after. Sometimes, you are allowed to be in a place because of a handshake and some beer, and hey, understandable. Because the weather's going wacky, a wacky woman who says that she is a witch, just two people, goes to the vicar and asks for her help. The vicar kidnaps her and tries to summon a demon, because of course the vicar is actually the master. Yeah, he summons a demon. He summons a demon 3 separate times in the storyline, because as with every part of this season, everything needs to happen multiple times. The Doctor and Jo are looking into the Devil's Hump during this time, so thus it collapses on them, nearly killing the Doctor. Jo asks for Benton and Yates to show up, so we get the whole crew just chilling out in a pub most of the whole storyline, while Yates immediately goes to help Jo, and on the way actually saves the witch lady, so she's able to give us some exposition in terms of that there sure are demons here, just actual demons, which the Doctor goes, meh, kinda. Yeah, he explains they're actually the weird demon stuff that's in the Devil's Hump is actually an alien spaceship, and the Daemons are a species of aliens who are sure bad. In summoning this demon, a big old ring around the town was made, so the Doctor goes to try and figure out what exactly to do about that. As that's happening, Jo goes to try and figure out how to stop the whole group. Again, the demon is summoned a second time, explaining that you'd better go find that doctor guy or I'll destroy this city the same way I destroyed Atlantis, ? Even though the next season will show a whole other way Atlantis sunk. So, you're a liar? The demon and the master send some lackeys to attack the Doctor, which, makes a whole helicopter explode. And later they convince enough of the town that they're gonna just attack the Doctor and wrap him up in the maypole, because P.S. it's near Mayday during this time. Isn't that weird? And they nearly burn him alive, but if it weren't for the fact that weird witchy lady had Benton sniper some things nearby, having the Doctor pretend to be magic, he would have been burnt alive. Thankfully, the guy who is in charge of that mob gets run over by best character Bessie. And the Doctor's able to interrupt summoning number 3, which after the big demon is summoned, Jo just goes, don't kill him, kill me, which makes the demon explode. They defeated him with the power of love? The Master tries to escape on Bessie, but because Bessie is obviously, again, best girl, Bessie brings him right back, and the Master is actually captured. finally ending this season-wide storyline of the Master constantly getting away and the Doctor having to chase after him. This whole story is very weird in the fact that magic is seemingly involved, even though it's actually like telepathy from alien technology, and they're like, is it real or is it magic? It's given Barry Lett's sudden interest in black magic during this time after he read The Devil Rides Out, and thus, he was like, oh, why not magic? They even wanted to make it seem like more authentic and more spooky by changing the exact way that the Daemons were spelled on the title. And even bringing up weird pagan words to describe things throughout the storyline and trying to connect it to other mythos. Not much to really mention about this storyline, really. It really wastes your time as it goes back around and around in a circle. I didn't even mention the weird daemon that was summoned by them. Not the one that was summoned, but the other one. They let a gargoyle out and it shoots some fireworks at people. P.S. This is the Croton of our season. This is a stupid designed monster. A whole group of soldiers are just staring at it and they're like, what are we gonna do? While it just shoots off some firecrackers and it's just really? This thing? I would have preferred they had multiple of these, just have a few of them, even if it's one guy in the same costume multiple times. It's have a bunch of them show up and start ripping dudes apart. Obviously you can't get too graphic because it's Doctor Who in the 70s, but you've had death on screen. You've had them fight armies of things. Where'd the budget go for this thing? Come on, have more than one silly gargoyle demon showing up if you want me to genuinely think this is a threat. Having one loud, angry monster going, I'll blow up the planet, isn't enough for me. That's always so lame when that happens in sci-fi of don't give me big screeny thing and have me assume I'm gonna be freaked out by it. Shut up. No, the big daemon in the Daemons isn't scary at all, and he didn't even sink Atlantis, so he's full of shit. If you want me scared of a real demon in this series, look at what we later get in New Who, right? Hell yeah, that's a scary demon. This thing looks like a Halloween outfit, and the other one looks like my sister when she was 8 made it. The storyline isn't terrible though. It just really feels like it goes around the same exact plot point twice until it finally gets to its conclusion, and they so quickly, with zero effort, defeat this big demon thing, which really just made none of it build up properly, and then it was just killed so anticlimactically. It does feel very cheap. Hell, they actually reuse footage from The Enemy of the World, and by the way, that scene with that helicopter was actually reused from unused footage from Russia with Love. And what's funny about that is when I was watching that storyline, I didn't mention it in the actual video, but I knew what kind of helicopter that was because I recognized it from that story, and I thought it was just the same kind of helicopter. But no, it's not just the same helicopter, but it's the same footage from the other time I've seen that same helicopter. A very cheaply made story. It isn't all that interesting, though I don't find it terrible. I found it fun of how odd Roger Delgado is while he's being scared by a demon. There's actually a cliffhanger that ends with him in trouble. I'm like, I don't think viewers are that worried that the bad guy will die. What? He's incredibly funny. It's funny seeing him do the friggin' rock on sign while summoning a demon. It's just kind of funny, right? And John Pertwee, while he's in the actual storyline, I think does an alright job. Probably not his best performance. He isn't really I don't think he's really interested throughout the whole storyline. I think he's ready for the season to get done filming. He's like, are we done? Cool, demons, whatever. Let's move on. But due to that, this is actually a really good episode for Joe, Mike, and Benton because they get a lot more time in this storyline. This is a very good unit episode. This is them figuring out what they gotta do here, working together to decide how they're gonna stop this weird cult that is in this village. This is especially a really good episode for Benton. He's incredibly helpful in this. He really shows you he's not just some goofy guy. He actively helps save the Doctor's life. The Doctor owes Benton at least something. And yeah, Mike, who doesn't really do too much throughout the whole Third Doctor's time in general, is probably one of the most forgettable companions in general, does a lot in this storyline to help out Joe. Not by himself. He's probably lost and wouldn't know what to do if he was on his own, but at least he is helpful to Joe. So, yay, Joe. And I guess Mike, I can't recommend this episode. I thought this episode was going to be better than it actually was, but then again, I didn't remember most of it, and now I realize why. It's just kind of a forgettable whatever storyline and an odd one to end this, like, plot line on. You actually have to watch this, because again, I always recommend to watch every season opener and finale, especially if it involves some change in terms of the end of the Master ongoing plot line and him finally being captured. Yeah, you gotta. But is not the worst thing, so fine, I guess. Sort of answer there. With that being said, that is the end of Season 8. Season 8 is an okay season, with most of it just kind of being alright. This ends up being actively a less as good season as the previous one, right? I would say I think the previous season had overall average better storylines and was kind of a better time. Now, it's kind of as equal because it's sort of balanced out by, again, the constant coming together of Jon Pertwee and Roger Delgado, but I feel like that was really it, right? A lot of the stories were really elevated by that fact, and if you kind of take that out, a lot of these stories are lesser storylines in comparison. Claws of Axos and Colony in Space are just kind of okay, and would be even less and probably be now D or at least C- if they didn't have Roger Delgado as the Master in them. Delgado isn't enough to make two other storylines of this season better than they actually are, and him being in less of one episode is probably the reason why it's the best of it, and that's kind of unfortunate. But none of that has to do with the fact that he's bad or anything. Delgado is the best part of each of these storylines due to how entertaining he is, again, especially when mixed with Jon Pertwee. Both of them really elevate the actual season with their constant cat and mouse game, and though it'll be better for the show to not have him as a main character, the Master is a always welcomed part of this show. I actually prefer the Ainley version later during the 4th and 5th Doctor's time, but Delgado is still absolutely fantastic. But while also being a good part of the show, he's also part of what makes this whole season just very repetitive, and it's because every single story goes exactly the same. That's weird to say, right? But every single story begins with them figuring out what's going on and what is they're about to, which of course is obviously the Master. He sends some guys at them and they go, whoa! And then they immediately are thrown off the trail so they can figure out exactly where the hell they just left off to then find the same thing, where essentially the same thing happens, but now it's the last time. And if we're going long enough, it might happen a third time, which every time it's always oh, who could possibly be what's going on here? It's the Master! And the Master's now I'm gonna take over the world! And then the fucking Doctor is just well, not if I do fucking this. And then the Master goes, no! I'm gonna run away now! And that's what happens every fucking time. Though it's certainly entertaining, it does end up being a kind of lesser... Though certainly being entertaining, the quality of the actual storylines ends up being lesser because they really weren't able to find that mix of grounded storytelling and wacky sci-fi shit quite yet. I know they're going to do better in the next season, which has some of my favorite Third Doctor storylines in general, but really Season 8 is them kind of continuing to learn. I think Season 7 and 8 in general aren't my favorite seasons, but they are a really refresh and learning time for this show, right? They needed something to really keep the show fresh, or they needed to show up on Earth and keep them there for a minute to really make people wonder what you can do with this show, where you can go with this show, and I guess even if not intentionally, because it definitely wasn't intentional, make them miss the weird sci-fi shit again. When it came down to it, this grounded time, though, when I look back at it, it isn't my favorite time. It was good for them to do this so they really get this refresh so they could come back and decide what they're going to do with the series going forward. 7 and 8 are not my favorite period. I think the beginning of the Unit Third Doctor era really isn't my favorite section of the show, and though there's lots of good stuff involving in it, neither are bad seasons, do not get me wrong, but they are not my favorite seasons. Really what makes me enjoy the Third Doctor is in the next season. But this season as a whole, though I don't fully enjoy it, is still an okay season. It's still one that I say there are good parts to it, I recommend watching those certain parts, but it also has some major downfalls of just stuff that I really do not care about. and they really needed to learn from this, and I really do think that they figure out what they're going to do with Doctor Who going forward, thanks to the failings of these 2 seasons, especially this one. Other than Jo showing up, of which he is of course a welcome part of this season, nothing really major changes from season to season, so no big like end of video talking about this actor left, so, you know, really we just have a next time on Doctor Who, we'll be talking about season 9. We'll be talking about the continued adventures of the Dr. Jo, sort of Mike, and then also kind of Benton and the Brigadier, with Doctor and Unit going through various different places and dealing with the continued attempts of other weird things happening to Earth that Unit has to deal with. The continued Third Doctor's adventures will continue into the, I believe, much better Season 9 next time on Every Doctor Who Ever. Until then, I've been the Movie-a-thoner. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you leave a like and subscribe, and if so, and make sure you leave a comment mentioning what else you want me to review in the future and what I may have missed about this season. But most importantly, stay good, stay safe, and don't be an asshole.